Alright guys, I'm filming this video for those of you who are having alternator problems, so I'm just going to cut right to the chase because hood's popped obviously, you're frustrated, your batteries are dead, so let's get going on the video. So this is my 0273, you see I got the battery charger hooked up, my batteries are dead, it died, left me stranded over at the grocery store. So how do you test your alternator? That's what this video is going to be, from start to finish, and then change it without throwing money at parts, without knowing what's wrong with them, because so many people do this. They'll throw an alternator at it and that's not even the problem, and it's just a waste of money. So I'm going to cover the whole thing step by step and kind of show you what you should be looking for and symptoms, and then we'll diagnose it, and then I'll end up changing out the alternator anyway. So alright, so now the very first thing is, if you can get the truck to jump again and jump start it or whatever and get it running, you need to check what your voltage is being returned back to your batteries, because we need to determine if the alternator is even working in the first place. It could be your batteries that are bad, it could be a starter, it's not starting, so there's a couple of different things, but this is just going to be to determine that your alternator is bad. So what we're going to do, you're going to need a multimeter here as a helpful tool if you're doing electrical work. You can get a direct current DC voltage at the battery, so just hook it up here, and you can either use like the little alligator clips or these, whichever works for you. And you want to start the truck, if you can get it jumped again or cranked, and stick these like on your terminals, negative to the negative, obviously positive to the positive. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand, but go crank the truck up and you should get 14 so volts, 13 really high in the 13s, or 14, 14.5, whatever. If you have a really good alternator, they'll charge it above 12 volts, well above 12 volts, that the batteries are recharging themselves. Because if you get a low reading like 11, 12 volts, that's your alternator's not working. You're running the power just off of these batteries, which is it's going to eventually die on you. So go ahead, crank up the truck, which I'll do now. Crank this up. Alright, I can see right off the bat that it is not charging, because that should be charging at 14, 13, really high in the 13, somewhere in there. I'd say if it's charging like 13, that's kind of low. You really want it to be upwards to 14 or above. So that means that my alternator is not working, which I knew because my batteries died. I got the battery light on the gauge, which is usually a typical sign that it's not working. So let's progress from here. So the alternator setup on these trucks is pretty basic. You got two wires coming in, you got a light green and a red, and then an orange and a blue, and then you got this big fat one, which this one actually seems kind of loose, which could be the problem, but nonetheless it's pretty simple. You got this light green red one right here, and this is standard for 99203, all of the 7.3 Super Duty trucks. So this wire gets power when the key is in start and run from the fuse box or your junction box, whatever you want to call it. The 9901s, they have a gem module, so a different terminology, but they do the same thing. They'll provide 12 volts to this wire, and now if you're not getting 12 volts to this wire, you're not going to get your system to run. It's just not going to work, because a lot of times these windshields on these trucks, they leak. You'll get water down into your fuse box, and then they'll do all sorts of crazy things, and that's the first thing I'm going to check. I'm going to pop this plug off, and you need to get 12 volts to this wire with the key in the run position, and we're going to do that with a multimeter here. Alright, now you got this little plug popped off, and take a good look in here. You got to make sure you get it on the right side. You want to probe the light green and red one on the here, so it'd be that one if you're looking at it. So what we're going to do here is, if you don't know how a multimeter works, it can calculate voltage values, resistance values. It's a really handy tool for any type of electrical work you're doing. So you switch it to direct current, because we're just measuring DC volts. Set it up. Do this with one hand, but you got one probe here which you stick on the wire or in the socket there. This is really hard with one hand. So you'd stick that there, and then you take your other one, and you can honestly hook it to ground or wherever. I'm just going to hook it right to the ground of the battery, and then you're going to hold them, and then you're going to look at it, turn with the key turned on, of course. Come in here, you need your battery terminals hooked up, obviously. Turn the key on and just touch them, and you should get 12 volts through this light green and red one. That's the starting point of where you have to be, or else you're going to throw money at this truck and you're never going to get anywhere, because if you ain't getting voltage here, the alternator system is just not going to work. So with that said, let's just assume you have 12 volts there. We'll keep moving on. If you don't, you're going to have to back trace that, and most likely you're going to have a bad fuse box, because they get water in them, like I said, and I've had them where the truck will charge randomly at random times, and then other times it won't. It's intermittent. So the fuse box, change it out. If you got water in it or whatever, you can inspect it and kind of go from there. But let's just assume you have 12 volts now. The next step I would say is take a good look at this plug. A lot of times these plugs, they'll get a little burnt out, or they'll get all messed up in there and they're not making good connection, or the pins in there aren't making good connection because they aren't pushed down all the way or whatever. So when you plug it back in, you want to make sure, just wiggle it real quick, and just with the truck running. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, so now that you've checked your power at this plug here, you want to make sure that your connections are good. It's time to check all your connections, especially your battery terminals too. Get them checked and clean. Mine are fine. They're good enough for this to test. I can see right off the bat that this wire is way too loose. If you look down in here, you can actually see that the washer completely crumbled apart, which I obviously did not see. So I guarantee if I fix that, I will probably have a good alternator system going. So we'll start with this. Just take your plug when you're running the truck and wiggle it, and we'll see what type of voltage we get back at the batteries. Have your tester on the terminals here and wiggle those wires. If you get 14 volts while you're here wiggling those wires, you just have a loose connection. You just got to tighten that up. Sometimes people will snip the end off, get a new pigtail or whatever, or repin it, or even just do a spade terminal, which I really don't recommend the spade terminal. I'd rather get a new pigtail altogether. And then this wire, like I said, is way too loose. I bet you if I wiggle that, I'll see 14 or whatever volts. So that's going to be most of the diagnostics. Other than that, there's not really many other things to test. Obviously, if your serpentine belt right here is cut or whatever, you're not going to get charged because this isn't going to be spinning. It's just things like that. Just look, give a good look, make sure all your connections are there. And now that we've determined kind of what my problem is, I put money on that this is the problem. All right guys, so I fixed mine, and now I just want to show you what we're getting on the bolts. Climbing up there, she's getting there. I don't see any battery light on anymore in there. Got a couple other lights on though. Look at that, 14.15. She's charging. It fixed it. That was all it was. There we go, my truck is fixed and good to go again. All it was that loose connection, so definitely check your connections, guys. You see it's declining again, but it went up to 14.15. Takes a second to get it going, but that alternator is good. It's charging it correctly. So now I'm going to show you what to do if your alternator is bad and you still get a low voltage reading here, like 12 or something. we'll do a disassembly on another truck, and then I'll put it back together real quick. So let's get started. All right, so we're over here on another truck. This is another 02 7.3. This one's a lot more stock than mine with the regular front clip. I decided to do the work on this one because we already have the batteries out. I'll be able to get a little bit of a better filming angle and stuff. So we're gonna start here, square one, disconnect your battery terminals. Just, you don't wanna get shocked, you know. Disconnect them. You don't have to take the batteries out, but I'm just doing it for filming purposes because they're already out. But make sure you loosen them, take them off, get them away from the terminal. You don't want them to touch because you're gonna be touching this wire up here and stuff. It's just safety procedures. So start with that. Then you can start, we'll just start unplugging the plugs. We got one plug here like I showed you on the other one, and this big terminal right here, which is a 10mm nut. So I'll start with that. All right, so for this black plug, I find it easiest to use a flat screwdriver and kind of stick it in and then pull the plug out. Just like that. You can see this one's a perfect example of what not to do. I really don't recommend using wire nuts ever when you're working on automotive electricity. And if you're gonna do this and put a new pigtail in like this one, I would use a soldered connection or something better than this, but this is just an example. This pigtail did go bad, and on this person's truck, they chose to replace it like that. But next, we'll remove that 10mm. Just get a little ratchet in here. Loosen it up. Don't lose this nut. Be careful not to drop it. Take this, you can separate that, and then we're good there. If you want, stick the nut back on so you don't lose it. And now next, obviously, since this thing has a belt on it, the belt's got tension, so it's going to be hard to get this belt off by just pulling on it. So there's a tensioner over here that you can loosen. It's down in there. You can see it right there. So let me get you set up here. I'll show you what I'm going to do there. All right, so you can see down in there, you got the tensioner, and I'm going to point to this right here, this square looking thing. There's a square insert there where you can get a big ratchet, big 1/2-inch ratchet like this, and you can stick the ratchet in the square. There you go, get the ratchet in there. You want to go ahead and pull this ratchet down, and you'll feel it pull. That'll take tension off. And then as you're pulling it, I can't really film it with my hand, but I just pulled that down, and it gave me enough tension to be able to take the belt and get my hand underneath here and slip it off. So you got to do it. You got to pull the ratchet down. While the ratchet is down, you can pull the bolt off. Now it's easy from here. It's super duper easy. It's just 3 bolts. You got 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here, and 1 bolt there. You unbolt it, comes off the pedestal, the alternator pedestal right there, and that's pretty much it. Now, for video purposes, and since there's nothing wrong with this, I don't really think I need to take this off to show you guys how these 3 bolts come off. They're easy. Just take them off, the alternator will come right out. So that's it. That's how you change your alternator. You get this one out, you get your new one in, you bolt it back on, and then you do the tensioner in the reverse direction. Oh, don't lose your belt here. You got your belt. You'll pull down on the tensioner again to make it loose, and you can snake your belt where you got to get it. And that's it. It's really not that hard, so there's no reason for me to really show any more here. It's just reversing what you just did, and that is it. Let me get this thing all buttoned back up. All right, when you do this, I'm going to put this back together, just the belt part to show you. When you do this, make sure your belt doesn't fall off your power steering pump down there. You kind of want to hold it with your hand loosely, and then I'll put the camera down here real quick and kind of show you. So I am going to pull down on the tensioner here. And I will be able to slip the belt right back, make sure it's all the way on, and that's it, you're done. You got your belt back on, it's easy. Make sure it's all connected around, and make sure you got it on the pulley and whatnot down in here and stuff. It looks good. So all you gotta do now is just plug in your things. Got your 10mm cable, You got your plug down in here. Where's this thing? This thing. You got your plug, just pull that back. Put that on, replace your batteries, fire it up, and test it. You should have 14 volts or so. So that's it. All right, now this one's all done, wrapped up. Let's go walk over to my truck. All right, guys, that's how you diagnose and change your alternator in your 7.3 truck. If your alternator is bad, do yourself a favor here and buy a good one. Don't buy some garbage one that's out there on the internet, because then you're just going to be doing this all over again. Buy something that's quality made, that has proven reviews, and that does the job right, because it's just, like I said, you don't want to be stranded somewhere and then your truck won't start. You got to pay a towing bill and all that stuff. Just do it right, spend a little extra money, get the right one. And then even if you do find yourself in this situation, follow these steps, test them all out, make sure your connections are good. I can't tell you how many times I read on the forums someone's got an alternator problem and they throw 200 bucks at an alternator and they're still stuck on the side of the road. Their truck's left dead and that sort of thing, the problem's not fixed. Just take the time and do the steps right without just going on eBay or whatever and just throwing your money thinking that's going to solve the problem. You got to actually diagnose these trucks. Yes, they're simple and they're easy. They tend to run for a long time, but it's maintenance and looking and making sure things are right before you go ahead and spend the money. Because in this case, this could have costed me $200 depending on what one I get, if I wasn't just looking at my terminal. The washer literally crumbled away. I guess it got cracked or something and then split in half, and who knows why, but this was loose. Tightened it right back up with a new washer and it's like new again. It charges perfectly, and it's just things like that, little things, they go far away on the 7.3. You got to take care of this truck. You can't just leave it alone, but if you do take care of it, it will take care of you, and it won't leave you stranded on the side of the road with dead batteries. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoy. If you want to see more 7.3 stuff, definitely hit that subscribe button below and give me a like on this video, and I will see you guys in the next video.